Okay, why don't we get started? It is Monday, March the 25th. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Finance Committee. Present at the start of the meeting, I see Councilor Greenberg from Ward 1, Councilor Mickley from Ward 2, Councilor Malachy from Ward 3, Councilor Gentile from Ward 4, Councilor Humphrey from Ward 5, Councilor Bixby from Ward 6, Councilor Grossman I saw from Ward 7, and that looks like it's it for right now. Hopefully, Councilor Lipoff will be joining us. I know that our COO, Jonathan Yeo, was here, CFO Maureen Lemieux I just saw, and I know Steve Curley is here, and then other folks will introduce as we get into the meeting. First item on the agenda is docket item 131-24. Her Honor the Mayor requesting authorization to accept and expend a reimbursement grant of $25,600 from the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency for an emergency management preparedness grant to improve operations of Newton's Emergency Operations Center. I see Chief Gentile is here. I assume you're here to present this item, Chief?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Counselor.
Go right ahead.
As you said, this is a reimbursement grant, so we're asking to expend and then be reimbursed the $25,600 emergency management preparedness grant from MEMA. We have a couple items in line for spending this money. We're going to start replacing the laptops that we use. We have a 3 or 4 year plan to replace all those laptops in the Emergency Operations Center. We also have some plans to do some work with our network. And we are trying to build out a network that we may be able to take with us on the road in a mobile environment. These are the things that communications is a huge factor in emergency management, and it's kind of an area that we're focusing on this year. Thank you. I will take any questions.
Okay, are there any questions from members of the council? Seeing none, can I get a motion, please? Council Malachy is moving approval of the item. Council Humphrey has seconded it.
I actually wanted to just ask a couple of questions.
Okay. Sorry, I thought you were, all right, go right ahead.
I just wanted to learn a little more about the Starlink dish project, and I guess without giving away any security secrets or anything, what does it do for us that we can't do now?
So it's going to extend our network. So basically, we'll be able to use that network outside of a building. This is an attempt to improve communications remotely.
And better than, so you won't have dead zones like we have cell phone dead zones on the south side, a lot of us.
That's a great that is one of the many uses that it can have. Anybody that was in Newton Center a few weeks ago without cell service and network service was interrupted there. That this project is intended to help situations like that as well.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm happy to move it.
Okay, and there's a second by Council Humphrey.
Chairman, I was going to ask something as well. Sorry.
Go right ahead. Sorry.
Thank you. Well, first of all, Chief, thank you from all of us for the department's work yesterday. Really tragic outcome there, but just completely heroic actions by your department, and we're so thankful to have such a great firefighting team here in Newton. Regarding this particular item, it was an interesting question that Councilor Malachy posed there, because I've heard some things that aren't so great about Starlink. So I wondered like how we had sort of evaluated that. You know, there compared to a dead zone, you know, almost anything is better, but I just wonder like you know, what kind of evaluations we did to come to this particular decision, just because, you know, I don't know, some of the Elon Musk stuff has been a little dodgy lately.
Well, first of all, Counselor, I appreciate the thank you for yesterday. It was a tough day in the city, a tough day for the members of the Newton Fire Department, but the men and women that responded there were truly heroic. So I appreciate the chance to bring that up. So our folks, our communications and IT folks specifically, will vet any project as we move forward. I think I think the Starlink may even be just the brand that we're bringing up. Once we have the funds secured, we do a pretty rigorous. I guess we search far and wide to get the best products available to us. So I think it's probably to the extent of my knowledge with the technology, but I understand what the goal is, and we'll work pretty hard to get to find the best products out there.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, Council Maliki has moved the item. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded? All right, I'll second it, I guess. So, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion passes 7-0. All right. Next
you, Counselor.
item. Thank you. Next item is 87-24. Her Honor the Mayor requesting discussion and possible ordinance amendments to update fees related to special permit, zone change, and site plan review fees requested by the Planning Department, the City Clerk's Office, and the Law Department. Before I turn this over to Bonnie Heath, I just want to bring to your attention that the last item on the agenda, which is 37-24, talks about a possible policy change to include renters and tenants in addition to property owners when notification is required for special permits, traffic council items, and other proposed changes. It's been made clear to me, or been made aware of the fact that if that is something that the council were to support and try and move forward, it has a financial impact. And I don't know, I assume that that was not necessarily taken into consideration by planning and others, and by ZAP when they move the item forward. So please keep that in mind. We will have to discuss that. Sometimes you have very large, say, apartment buildings that are near these projects, and you would have to notify everybody individually, which is obviously time and money for mailings. So at some point, we have to decide if there is support for that item. So having said that, Bonnie, do you want to at least initially present this?
Happy to, and you're correct. We didn't take that calculation into account. Good evening. This item before you is a collaboration, as Councilor Gentile alluded to, from the city clerk, the planning department, and the law department to look at the current fee schedule that we have here in the city, that I'll say was probably long overdue to be looked at. It's been at least 10 years, if not longer, in terms of updating the fees that we have. So Elisa Sandoval, who's our deputy director, did kind of an extensive look at what other communities were charging, She also met several times with the city clerk's office and the law department to develop the rationale for the fees. She couldn't be here this evening, so I'm pinch hitting, but I thought the memos that she prepared laid it out pretty well. The short story is that the current fee that we charge doesn't even cover the noticing costs, but it doesn't even approach covering the amount of time that's involved in all of these various filings in terms of city staff, you know, from the clerk's office, from the planning department, et cetera. It's obvious, I think, for the larger projects, but even some of the smaller projects can be quite labor intensive. So we landed on a fee schedule that we think is appropriate for special permits, and I'll just touch on those and then I'm happy to answer questions. The special permit fee would start at $1,000 and then go up from there depending on the size of the project. Same with the change of zone petitions. Often they're complicated as well. That would be $1,000, and then the smaller fee increases would have to do with administrative site plan review, which would go from $350 to $500. Signs, again, smaller level of effort involved, $350 to $500. Accessory apartments, $250 to $500. We have a new process for the planning board that would mirror in many ways the existing special permit process and review. So that would be established at $1,000, similar to the special permit. And then we did give some thought to a number of smaller kinds of processes, including parking waivers, where there's less analysis involved. That would be $500. Homeowners in particular that would be coming in for extensions of non-conforming FAR or other types of nonconformities, which the land use committee sees. And these tend to be the homeowners themselves that come in that want to put an extension on their home that's relatively modest. That would be $500. And then occasionally we get projects that have to be renoticed because there's a change in the project, and that would be an additional $500. So I'm happy to answer questions.
So before I ask for questions from committee members, so is that everything that has been proposed, is these 10 areas and there's nothing else? Because I saw a memo in part of the packet that seemed to include some additional permits and fees, but from what you just said, and I'm looking at early in the backup, there seemed to be 10 increases or 10 changes, and that's it. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct for this package, although in the course of this discussion, other entities have suggested maybe it's time to relook at some of their fees as well. We haven't done that analysis yet, so what you have before you is the package we're presenting.
Okay. And did the zoning and planning committee make any changes to what had been recommended to them?
They did not.
Okay. All right, members of the committee, questions? Council Maliki.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm glad you brought up the last item because I was going to as well. I would like to learn more about the actual notification costs, which you said average over $400. How much of that is the purchasing the ad, and is it just like one is it like a hard copy newspaper you have to?
That's,
put in?
yeah. Excuse me, Councilman, that is the ad, Councilor Maliki. It's over $400, and that's, I think it's the Boston Herald that is used
Any particular reason for the Herald as opposed to the Globe? And
because the Globe is 3 or 4 times the cost of the Herald.
okay, so
Yeah, and nobody reads the paper anyway.
I was going to say, I don't know how many people in Newton subscribe to the Herald or the Globe. Is the law that it has to be like the Dead Tree edition of a paper, not Fig City News and Beacon or something like that?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah, it's not another reason to miss the tab. So just the ad in the Herald, and what is it, like 2 weeks in a row or something, or 2 weeks ahead of the whatever you're noticing?
That's correct. Yep.
That's $400
Mm-hmm.
and something.
Yep.
So how are you covering, or you would still not be covering the postage for the notification mailings to the 300-foot abutters?
Correct. Under the current scenario, we're not even covering the costs of the ad.
Wait, okay, now you're not covering the cost of the ad, but
Yep.
under the proposed, say $500
Or $1,000.
fee or $1,000 fee
Mm-hmm.
would cover the ad, but it sounds like not a whole lot else.
No, I think it would cover let's say the ad's about $400 on average for a special permit. So if the fee was $1,000, that would account for the postage and mailings and some amount of the labor involved to process the application.
Okay, in the memo, I thought the average of $400 included both the ad and the mailings, but it sounds like it just includes the ad.
Just the ad.
And how much is did you figure out what the average cost of a mailing is? And is it, I guess, like the average number of people mailed to, and what's the cost for the postage? Does it have to be certified or registered or just first class?
I believe, yeah, I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you. Sorry.
And on the so maybe depending on the amount of mailings, we're hopefully, at least on the bigger projects, covering the cost of the mailing, but then it
Yes.
sounds like we're really not covering staff time at all.
I think it's fair to say that we cover the mailing costs with this fee increase, and again, a portion of the staff time that we're not covering now.
And just on the you had a breakdown of small, medium, large, and very large projects as to show examples.
We
but,
did.
Am I right that nobody really has to say this is a large one, this is a small one? It's all by formula, by 1,000 square feet and times the.
That's correct.
1,000
Yeah.
square feet.
Yep.
So there's
So
no subjectivity involved in that. Okay.
exactly. Yeah.
And I noticed in one of the other towns, it might have been Cambridge, they had sort of the main fee and plus the notification costs. And I was wondering if we could break it out that way. I don't actually want to hold this up. I'd like to get something passed, but in a hopefully soon next round, could we look at breaking out the notification costs so that we could make sure that if we want to expand notification to, the roughly 30% of residents who are renters, not owners, that we could ensure that that is covered.
So in the course of looking at how every community does it slightly differently. So I did see a number of ways in which some communities make it the responsibility of the applicant to do the mailing and then provide verification of that. That's an administrative burden and nightmare to do it that way. I much prefer the way that we do it because we make sure that everybody is noticed appropriately. So I can get back to you with further details on what the average cost is for a mailing and approximately how many folks are mailed on an average special permit.
Yeah, I would like to do that because I kind of see this as an interim step to maybe as a move toward covering our costs. And I remember Chris Markowitz talking about trying to cover or do a better job of covering our costs. So I think this is progress, but I don't think it should be the end point. And it's sort of ironic that you're doing what we wanted to do on the tree ordinance, have the city do it to make sure it was done, and we've basically outsourced it to applicants with verification. So I'll let somebody else go. All right, thank you.
I should also note that we have been joined by Council Lucas. Always a pleasure, Council. Any other questions on this item? I just wanted to make a general observation that, first of all, I agree 100% that it is time to change these fees, permit fees, because for a while now, I've felt that they are extremely low when you look at the amount of work that needs to be done. And Bonnie, I was hoping that maybe you or somebody else could just comment. Have we gone far enough? I've always been concerned about, I'm not worried about the homeowner that comes in, you know, for a simple special permit, you know, not developer, just trying to improve their family situation. I'm not looking to hurt those folks in any way. But having sat through 2 Riverside projects and a bunch of other projects and seeing how much staff time actually ends up being taken up, I wonder if we are charging enough. And then one area in particular, administrative site plan. When I'm familiar with several of them, especially when it comes to LaSalle, because again, administrative site plan comes up a lot of times with these Dover projects where the petitioner is already receiving a huge benefit of not having to go through the special permit process. And I know I think you're selling yourself short, because I've seen a couple of different memos that either you've done or a staff person has done that are quite detailed, that had to take a significant amount of time to do. And then, as you point out, there are community meetings, and to think that I can't see how $500 comes even close to covering all the time that our staff puts in on an administrative site plan review. So again, just a general question, are you certain that we've gone far enough with some of these things?
I take the second part of your comments first, which is I think you're correct. The administrative site plans that I see Attorney Temple has joined us can sometimes be complex too. It's a real mixed bag with those. So it's sometimes they're really straightforward. I can think of one we had last month involving a church in Newton Center. That was kind of a one and done meeting, but there are others that are equally as complex as a special permit. With regard to your first question is, I think we're taking a great leap forward here in terms of where we are to where we are now, and in looking again at the schedule of what other communities are doing. I think we're leaping ahead of quite a few. I think a lot of communities are way behind in this. And I think we're putting ourselves right with the more on the ball progressive communities in terms of what should be charged. And the other point I'll make is that in the memo, there's a listing of projects and what they were charged and what they would be charged under the new ordinance. And I think they're pretty instructive for projects like Craft Street and Northland, where we were charging a much lower amount, and under this program would be much more appropriate for the amount of time involved.
Okay, Council Lucas?
Thank you, Chair. Director Heath, just got a couple of questions.
Sure.
When you, or I don't know if it's you or the planning department or DPW, when we have items in traffic council, obviously items in land use, historical commission, other other meetings that require a public notice. Is there I don't know how to say this. For each of those different meetings, are there different rules on how far you draw that map to send notices to abutters? If you get what I'm saying.
I do get what you're saying, and I don't know the answer to that. I think they are different. I know the Historic Commission changed within the past 3 or 4 years to a new circumference area. I don't think they all match.
Okay, I don't know what the committee is going to do with this item. But could you provide that information?
I sure can.
Okay, good.
Yep, yep.
When you get it. And you were also recommending changes to the costs of special permits and the different types and all that. If approved by the council, when would that go when would that go into effect?
Attorney Temple, do you want to take that one?
Unless you specify a specific effective date, it will go into effect after it's passed and signed by the mayor, and I believe the 20 days has passed. And so any special permit that has not been applied for will be subject to these new fees.
Got it. And maybe I must have missed it, but what is the cost for a parking waiver now and proposed? I didn't see it in there, but.
So, good question. That presently doesn't exist as a separate special permit. So, if, for example, a restaurant came in for a parking waiver, currently that would be the same as a special permit. I think we are suggesting that if that's the only thing that's being requested, as a special permit, it's just the parking waiver, that'd be a $500 charge
500,
as opposed to 1,000.
Okay, so it's 500 now and you wanna,
No, it's part of special permit now, so it's 350. So it would go from 350 to 500.
got it, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can think of a couple that would, well, they would prefer not to pay a special permit fee and just, some folks want to waive the parking requirements altogether. We're not here to discuss that now, but that is very helpful. Thank you, Director Heath. That's all I have, Chair.
Okay, Council Bixby.
Thank you. So I guess I was misunderstanding the parking waiver thing. I thought that was separating it out instead of the $1,000 thing. So it would go up for businesses applying for parking waiver under 10 stalls now, based on what they would pay now.
Correct, right. It's 350 now, and we under this proposal, it would go to 500.
Okay. And that's for all the same reasons as everything else. It costs, we have to notice it to the public and.
Yeah, I think we were trying to be sensitive here to the complexity of a request like that, and also the fact that sometimes it's a business or a restaurant that has to come in for that, and we're trying to promote economic development.
Okay, but we are still proposing raising the cost to them
Slightly.
in this moment. So like,
Yep.
okay. Got it. I guess I'm a little concerned about that, but do understand the rationale overall. So not sure. I guess my related question is about signs. I'm having a little bit of trouble with all our ordinances being in different PDFs, lining up what sign pieces trigger special permits here. Do you have any examples of the types of signs that would trigger this?
Anything that would exceed what is allowed. So we'll see these in sometimes in special permits. Sometimes people want to come in for a sign that's bigger than what's allowed to the land use committee. And if that's their only request, again, we're suggesting that instead of the current 350, they pay 500.
Okay. Thanks. I guess that's all. Thank you.
Council Greenberg?
Oh, thank you, Chair. Mr. Heath, I was just reviewing your fee examples based on project types. That is really eye-opening. It's quite a difference. The Northland project would go from $1,000 to $52,000. I really think this is something we really need to do right away. I think it's the money that we need right away with these big projects. It's quite a difference. Thank you. That's it, Chair.
Thank you. Council Maliki, do you have something else or your hand's still up?
No, I did, a couple of other things. During the zoning planning discussion, Councilor Baker brought up the Historic Commission items and Conservation Commission items as ones that involve planning department staff time. And as listening here, I just thought of the much smaller item, but the fence appeals, I guess, also involve somebody from planning. But particularly the historic can get very involved with meeting after meeting. And I'm not so familiar with Conservation Commission, but are you going to be looking at fees for those and this reflecting the staff time involved? And the notification there too?
I think that would be appropriate.
Okay, great.
Yep.
And is there a way to update these fees more often to reflect, so we're not waiting, it was mentioned 5 years, every 5 years we fold in the ordinance changes, but you know, for example, Mark Welch in forestry, he's going to do annual updates on recompense for removed trees because costs increase every year. Is there a way to sort of have a factor for staff time and however you want to end up doing the notification costs, and then update that on an annual basis to reflect cost increases, salary increases, and so forth, so that we don't get so far behind?
I think that 5 years is a great leap forward, considering it's been at least 10 years, if not longer, on this. And that seems appropriate to me. Of course, if something changes drastically, we could always revisit this.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree. If five years is a lot better than not knowing when we last did it. So, okay. I look forward to the follow-up. Thank you.
Council Greenberg, do you have any other questions?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I forgot to lower my hand.
That's all right. Anyone else before I had one final point I think I wanted to make? Seeing none, I do want to come back to the administrative site plan review. Administrative site plan review, at least the way that I look at it, is done in lieu of a special permit because the petitioner has certain rights under the Dover Amendment, but it's still pretty significant. And it seems to me that as I said earlier, that the $500 doesn't come close to covering, staff time. And to be somewhat consistent, I would think that it would be at a minimum the same as a special permit review, which is $1,000 minus, all of the different add-ons. So that it would be, a straight $1,000, even though some of these involve, pretty big projects, 2 college dormitories, which have a pretty big impact on the neighbors and a lot of review work that goes into it. I think $1,000 is still a bargain. So I don't know how others feel about it, but I would suggest that is one change that this committee should consider making. Any thoughts? If if no one is interested necessarily in doing that in committee, then I guess what I could do is make the case at full council and see what the full council thinks about it, unless somebody else wants to weigh in on finance.
I'd support making that change in committee. Can it be, would it not slow things down terribly? Could zoning and planning be polled at full council so it still gets approved at the same meeting?
Yeah, we can deal with it at, yeah, there would be, you know, two conflicting reports on, just on that one item, and the council would either vote to support zoning and planning, or the commissioner could poll his committee if he thought that that would be acceptable within the committee. I would speak to him ahead of time and make the suggestion, and he could poll his committee, and it could go through right on first call. And if not, it would just, we'd take it up at second call, and either finance report would be submitted or zoning and planning report would be moved. So it can, yeah, there's no reason for it to go beyond the next meeting. Council Bixby.
Apologies. I generally agree, except for do just feel like a couple of the things that would fall in this category, such as daycares, you know, and potentially kind of religious-based community centers, would be, you know, are places that are such benefit to the community. I don't know if there's any way to, you know, pull at them a little bit, but, you know, an initial cost to them could be pretty significant there.
Okay.
Daycares in particular, I just know anything, any additional costs to them can be, you know, prohibitive, and then just raise costs for families as well.
Planning Director Heath, do you get a lot of administrative site plan reviews for daycare centers and uses like that?
We do. I'm happy to bring in Attorney Temple's voice on this too. I understand the division between, you know, a big operator that falls under Dover and a smaller nonprofit. So I don't know, Jonah, if there's any way to make a division there somehow.
I think we'd want to give that some more thought, and my recommendation to the committee would be to give staff more time on this one, because we'd want to do some analysis to look at what the staff time really is, what the costs really are, to make sure they're defensible. Because one thing to keep in mind with admin site plan review is there is no notice to abutters and there is no public hearing, so those costs are not part of administrative site plan review. That's not to say there isn't probably a really valid argument to increase the fees. I would just want us to have some time to look into it a little more.
Well, every administrative site plan that I've been part of, and again, a lot of it's related to LaSalle, we've always had a public hearing. And now maybe it's not absolutely required, but it's something, it's a practice that we've adopted in Newton for a long time now.
Right, it's just not noticed by the city.
Right. All right, I mean, I'm fine with that. If we want to, I don't want to hold things up here. If we want to look into it a little bit more, if we can get some information prior to the full council meeting, great. If not, it's, you know, we can always revisit this at another time. And I am definitely influenced by the, you know, the larger scale projects, institutions. I hadn't really, you know, Council Bixby makes a good point. I hadn't really thought about the small mom and pop. So why don't we just leave it as is for now? Is there, I see no other hands for questions. Is there a motion on the item?
I'll move it.
Council Grossman, I see your hand up.
I was going to move it.
Okay, so Council Maliki said it first. So Council Grossman second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Okay, motion passes 7-0 to 1. All right, thank you. Next item is 129-24. Councilors Maliki, Lucas, Oliver, Farrell, Getz, Bixby, and Block requesting an update from the mayor's office on plans for utilizing the remaining ARPA funds, opportunity for new public input, potential changes, and anticipated uses in the plan for the December 31st, 2024 contracting deadline, including how subsequent cost overruns or underruns will be handled. I know that I'm told that Chief Operating Officer Yo is here tonight and has prepared a presentation. Before I turn it over to him, we have 1, 2, 3. I see at least 3 counselors in the room that have signed on to this. So if anybody wants to give, a brief explanation as to why this was docketed in the first place, and then we'll turn it over to Jonathan, feel free. If not, we can just go right to Jonathan's presentation. I see 2 hands, so let me go to Council Maliki first.
Thank you. So I thought it was time for an update, given that we have 9 months left to nail down contracts, and it seemed like there was at least one big item that nothing had happened on. That's one reason. The other being that there was no, the last public listening session that the mayor held was back in February 2022, and a lot of stuff has happened since then. And not tonight, obviously, but I would love for there to be either another listening session sponsored by the mayor to kind of see how people are feeling about what's been done so far and what we should do with what is yet to be committed. And, based on, we heard a lot during the strike about city spending, and during the Washington Street pilot leading up to that, why are we spending ARPA on that? And I would like to, and I guess the third thing being to better understand, given that we have the hard deadline to get contracts nailed down on December 31 of this year, but logistically, how do we manage things that we might have signed a contract for, but we don't know exactly what the final costs are going to be? And if we end up not needing all the money for a particular item, are we just going to spend it anyway? Or how do we manage all of that? So that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Council Lucas.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to second what Councilor Maliki said. I believe our number for ARPA was 63.5. Just an update, has the entire 63.5 been allocated to a specific purpose? And then the money that has been allocated, has it all been spent? For example, if we agreed to spend $1 million on whatever, and we ended up only spending, 950,000, for example, where is that extra 50,000? What are we going to do with it? I presume it's either you use it or lose it. And just those particular questions, I think it's appropriate to get an update on. So that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay. Jonathan, how about I turn it over to you?
Wonderful. Let me, if I could share a screen here. Doke. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you, and the counselors, Lucas and Maliki, great questions. This is the right time to give an update to the council on all of this. So thank you for docketing this. I'll try to answer those 4 specific questions that are in the docket as well. Tonight with us are their great financial team, Perry Rosenfield, Connor Roach, who've been helping on all things ARPA and making sure we get all of our filings in, and working with the comptroller who is here to make sure that we're accounting for everything correctly. And our CFO, Maureen Lemieux, is here, of course, and can help me answer any questions that you might have. So I'm going to go through very briefly some slides, very quick, and then some of the financials where we stand right now, and then answer your questions and try to answer those specific questions you have. So let's see. As you all know, we had unprecedented one-time federal funding with ARPA, $63.59 million, which was really a godsend for this city. We were very impacted by COVID financially and to our residents and businesses and our school system. Really, ARPA was there to support those most impacted by the pandemic and invest in the operations of our schools and our city, and seeding initiatives here to help Newtonians in our city not just stabilize and recover, but permanently become more resilient, livable, vibrant, inclusive, and sustainable. And so we've really been investing these funds with a lens of equity, ensuring all geographic areas of Newton are covered and all ages and all people are supported while we help those disproportionately hurt by COVID. The target, the total amount, $63.59 million. The allocation, we are on target to spend all of that and have it fully contracted by the end of this calendar year, and then expended no later than 2 years later than that. Currently, we have 55 projects identified. That is somewhat of a moving target, but 55 is the number right now. And, you know, really, we did craft this plan through a series of community meetings and listening sessions with lots of email to our ARPA input email address and open office hours and community meetings. So there has been a lot of input. Just in terms of Newton Public Schools, mentioned over $20 million, might be like $22, $23 million of ARPA went to Newton Public School related projects, in addition to their direct pandemic relief funding that they did receive. We categorize things into buckets. You could take these projects, these 55 projects, and slice them into many different categories. Many of the projects really cover multiple categories, but this is the way we did it. Really, it's students in schools, COVID response, housing and human services, roads and traffic calming, parks, rec, culture, municipal financial recovery, critical infrastructure, economic recovery in village centers, and then reserve. So at this point, as you can see, 98% of our funds have been allocated, and we are on target to spend all of those funds. We do have about $1.5 million left in reserve, and we are using that. We will be using that to both backfill existing projects if they need more money, or if new ideas come up. And I think certainly any new input that you have on additional projects, we'd be happy to hear about for sure. And a good question, I think Councilor Lucas asked, when there's a project that is done, and we've had a number of projects fully completed. And so really Perry and Connor and I take a look on a regular basis every quarter through the projects. If there's leftover monies, we take them back and put them back into the reserve and to be used for other projects. So we are closely watching each project to make sure that that we're not leaving anything behind. Couple quick slides on some photos on the school side. First bucket, $2 million to our elementary reading program. Those of you who follow Newton Public Schools closely know that this was a huge need to replace and improve our elementary reading program. And this is off to a really great start. The $2 million helped also the superintendent get $1 million grant from the state. So really over $3 million is now being put towards both training for staff as well as the materials. And it's not just books, it's a wide range of curriculum materials as part of a package. They've started with K through 2 this year. Next year, they will be implementing 3 through 5. So the program is really off to a great start. Another school project, the Horace Mann Playground, done. Those of you who haven't been over there, go check it out. It's quite fun. In the bucket of helping those and groups that need help, and thinking about climate resiliency, we merged two concepts of affordable housing and climate resiliency into one project. And we've been working closely with the Newton Housing Authority, the Newton Community Development Foundation, and Two Life Communities, really the three major groups in the city that create and run affordable housing. And what we're doing is working with the team of consultants to look at what can be done to improve sustainability and resiliency in these housing projects. And we're really off to a great start in terms of reports. And we've been able to actually leverage quite a bit of money now from Mass Save to implement a bunch of projects. And we're looking at a major project at the Horace Mann project of the Newton Housing Authority, which is on Watertown Street, across from NECP, really where the old Horace Mann School used to be. And to really create, put in heat pumps there and thermostats for the units. These units currently have no temperature controls right now, which is a little sad. We're also looking, hopefully, to put solar there as well and provide real savings to the NHA. So this is an exciting project. Bill Ferguson from our sustainability team is working with consultants and these groups to make this happen. Road paving. You're all aware we're spending lots of money in both city money, state money, free cash funds, and ARPA funds to really do a real surge right now on road paving. And last year we did a whole bunch of residential roads north of the Pike and south of the Pike, dozens of roads. And we have 51 new roads. You probably saw the mayor's update recently. With 51 maintenance overlays. These are smaller residential roads where there are desperate need with very low PCIs. So we've really been targeting this scientifically to get the biggest bang for the buck. And a lot of these maintenance overlays are funded using the ARPA funds that we put forward. We're also doing a whole bunch of traffic calming projects and curb ramp improvements using ARPA. We're also creating the first bike ped plan, which is now called the Walk, Ride, and Roll Plan, using $80,000. And when you all saw that we have appointed Jen Martin as our new Director of Transportation Planning, once she gets started and underway, we'll be holding, there's already been some public input on this whole project, but she will be helping lead this to completion in the May-June time period. So stay tuned for that. Albemarle Fields, here is the synthetic turf project that we will be using ARPA funds. Actually, have already begun to use ARPA funds to implement this sorely needed project for Newton North High School to have a second synthetic turf field here in this location to go well with the grass field investments we're making both here at Albemarle, but also at McGrath and Burr School and other locations across the city. A real balanced approach to making sure we maximize our field space and play space for both youth leagues, adult leagues, and then especially our school leagues. We've also used ARPA funds for lighting in Newton South. This is from a drone. You can see how targeted the lighting is, and this is in my neighborhood at Newton North High School. This has turned out to be just amazing use of funds, and also this field will be replaced this summer, not with ARPA funds, but with free cash. We've done some other things in the parks, smaller things. This is the hut. For those of you who've been to the hut at Newton Center, no, it's a little hard to see on the left, but the building was in really decrepit shape. Josh Morse got some real TLC into this with paint and then some carpentry repairs. It's looking a lot nicer right now. It's not an eyesore any longer. Same with the Chafin House over in Farlow Park in Newton Corner. This building, which houses city staff, is really in need of a real new paint job. And here's the results. We're also using ARPA funds to help supplement other funding sources. This is a good example of the Marty Center Trail Phase 2 in Auburndale, which is going to be an amazing project, a boardwalk behind the Lions field. And this will be supplementing state grant funds that I think you all approved some time ago. So that will be under construction soon. And then Gaff Pool, a lot of this is CPC funded, but we are using ARPA funds. CPC does like for the city to kick in money, and we've done that with ARPA. And as many of you know, here is the construction updates that our commissioner is posting on a regular basis on social media, and this is really moving along nicely. One of the first things we did was to resurrect a project that we had to stop due to the COVID epidemic and the loss of city funds. This was the expansion, the long overdue expansion of the children's room at the Newton Free Library. Everyone should make sure they see that. When you go on the tour on Friday, if you're coming, you'll get to walk through that with our team. We're doing a bunch of things in village centers. Newton Highlands Village Center project is under design. This was $1 million of ARPA funds. This project is ongoing. Petty Square in Newton Upper Falls. Again, we're trying to get to geographic diversity here all across the city. This is a project that's just getting under construction right now. We kicked in $1.1 million to supplement some major state grants. The Washington Street pilot, $3 million. This is just some photos. Many of you have been involved and know, that the project went through public facilities. We'll be coming back with the final versions to the city council sometime soon. We are expecting to put this out to bid, hope to put this out to bid and expend these funds before the end, get them contracted before the end of this calendar year. I have some ARPA snapshots in terms of funding, where we are. Those of you who are interested in anything specific, I'm not going to go through the details of these right now, but I have the categories and the 55 different projects here. So if any of you have any specific questions on where we stand, as you can see, 63.5 million is the bottom line. We've obligated nearly 49 million, expended 38 million, but we are, we've allocated quite a few of, 98% to all of these projects. So not everything that we've allocated has been fully obligated yet, but we are in the home stretches of the project. So just in terms of your questions, cost overruns, good question. Underruns, I mentioned, we are taking the money back. Cost overruns, we certainly will need to then dip into the reserves. That's one of the reasons we have the reserves, or find another funding source, or cancel the project. Potential changes in anticipated uses. These projects are fluid. We do carefully review as a team all of these projects on a regular basis. If a project needs to be changed or deleted, we certainly will do that. And we are in a big push over the next, between now and June and July, to really know exactly where we're going to be by December. So it is something that we are all laser focused on. Opportunity for new public input. We're certainly interested. People do send us ideas from time to time. If counselors have further ideas for the $1.5 million that is remaining, please let us know. This was the update on the remaining project. So I'm here to answer your questions.
Okay. Council Maliki.
Sorry, missed the mute button. If you have a underrun between now and December 31 and a project is done, you put the leftover back into reserves. If you have an underrun after December 31, can you still reallocate that money to a different ARPA qualified project, or does it have to, I mean, because you wouldn't have necessarily contracted for it?
Right, well, certainly our planning is to prevent that from happening. I don't know, Maureen or Perry, if you want to help me answer this question.
I'll jump in and just agree with Jonathan. We are going to work very, very carefully to make sure that we don't have any underruns. I would be afraid that we would potentially have an issue. And so if we think anything is going to cost less than we had forecasted, we will quite possibly move that money out to begin with, such as the children's room in the library. We initially set aside 2 million. I think we spent about 1.6 million. We knew well ahead of time in that project. Our bids came in, certainly under what we were forecasting. We knew for certainly a few months that project would come in significantly under our budget. And so if we ever get to the September, October timeframe, and we think that's happening with any of our projects, I'm sure we will pivot quickly so that it is absolutely our intent not to leave a dollar on the table.
Exactly. I think I'll just add to that I suspect this will be an issue for every city and town in the United States, instead of ARPA. And so as we've seen to date, the federal government has tried to keep the original program together, but provide some flexibility. I don't want to bank on it. We shouldn't assume that it's going to happen. But if for some reason, I think lots of communities are going to have the same concern and have the same potential for having projects that you don't want to then leave money on the table, and you want to be able to reuse. So we'll see what happens, but we want to assume that we're going to spend every nickel and make sure we do that as we head towards the end of the calendar year.
Okay, to give an example, if you have a large amount allocated to road paving and traffic calming in general, and that seems pretty flexible. Like am I correct that you don't have to nail down exactly which roads you're going to pave or exactly which bump outs you're going to do?
We would need to contract for specific either amounts or roads. So it is something we hope to be able to add to if needed towards the end of the year. Now, there are real contractual issues that need to be carefully looked at. We've already been talking with DPW about this and making sure that as we head into the second half of this calendar year, that if we needed to add roads, for example, or add traffic calming or whatever it is, that we could do that, and that they would have contractors ready to either bid on those or have their contracts amended to incorporate that.
And we're probably competing against all the other cities and towns who are.
That's right.
Trying to spend. It's like everyone running out to the whatever store on April 15 tax-free day or whatever.
Yeah, the good news is that we are well ahead. I think well ahead of many communities. We are spending. We've been spending at appropriate amounts, and we've been doing the road contracting early enough in the year so that we get the contracts and get the paving companies who are able to get our work done. No.
And for the specific Washington Street pilot project, where I don't know when exactly your deadline is going to be for the contract, which you've allowed, I believe, 2.77 or so million for. If the bids come in over, or you end up picking a bid that's over, I guess you have the reserve to draw from. But if it's whatever amount it ends up being, maybe it's lower than 2.7, maybe it's above. Will it be the case that that's the contract amount, and there aren't going to be overruns or underruns in 2025 or 2026? They're going to do whatever they can do for that amount of money. And because we won't be able to change the contract after December 31.
Most construction contracts come in at, at the construction amount. If there were cost overruns, like a change orders, for example, we would, we would have to, if we weren't able to use ARPA, we would have to use another funding source to make that happen. But I think as we do the contracting, we're going to be very strategic about how we do it so that we don't get ourselves into trouble. And this not just the Washington Street pilot. There may be some others where we just really need to be very careful how we do the contracting.
Okay, and you pointed out the affordable housing climate resiliency amount of, I guess, 3 million was allocated, and that's the one I was really curious about because as of Mr. Curley's February report, 2.6 million is still unexpended, unencumbered. So that just seems like an awful lot of what are probably going to be lots of little specific contracts to get signed.
Well, it's a great question. We did just recently, about a month ago, make some of the big program decisions, what we're going to do there. Much of the money, I think, will be spent through one major contract at this particular development, the Horace Mann project. And so it's a good question, but I think we are on track to get that done. It's really an exciting project. We'd like to use this as an example, and then use this as an example then to get state and federal funding for similar things at the rest of the housing projects here in the city.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I might think of more things, but I'll let somebody else go.
I see Council Lucas has his hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Yo, and other city staff who contributed to the presentation. Before I have some questions, but before, again, I think it would have been better, Mr. Yo, if this was in the Friday packet, just so that we could have come up with our, I think, better and more efficient questions ahead of time. So I'm just going off of what you had in your report there, and I hope that report will be in the Finance Committee report in our
Sure, I can send it along. It's just a presentation for tonight, so yeah.
Thank you. And you also sent us, I think it was you, sent us 4 PDFs earlier today.
The comptroller, Steve Curley, who is here, sent, I think, along through the chair, his latest update on these. They're in a little different buckets than the way we look at it, but they're all the same numbers, same projects.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I just, again, I think it would have been better if it was in the Friday packet. So I think on your presentation on slide 3, you had about 1.5 million in reserves that you're holding. I assume that's an accumulation of the other projects that went under budgeted. Is that about right?
Actually, very little of it is. Much of it we've had intentionally left in reserve all along, so that we could use that in case there are changes, something new came along, somebody had a new great idea, and or we needed to supplement funding in one of the other projects.
Yeah.
So it was intentional.
So you've been pretty good about staying, for the most part, on budget, not under, not over. You've been right near where you.
That's right.
Okay. So I know Councilor Malky mentioned the Washington Street pilot. You had 3 million in your presentation. I thought it was 2.77.
Yeah, 3 million is what we originally had. We lowered it to 2.77. We used some of that funding to pay for these required, I guess they're federally required construction easements on the ComAv carriageway project over in Auburndale. So so it's really 2.77 currently.
Okay. So I presume there is going to be leftover money.
Not in ARPA. We're not planning any leftover money.
Well, you know what, I meant there'll be some money that will be unspent as we get closer to December 31st, with the goal being we're gonna spend it all, is what I
That's
meant.
right.
Is what I meant to say.
Yeah, and then I think that number will get lower and lower as
Yeah.
we get closer and closer. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also gonna be harder and harder to allocate $10,000, $20,000 to a project. But the one thing I didn't see, I didn't see in that ARPA expenditure list, and I'm sure Councillor Mickley will appreciate this, is that there was no money going to food banks. At least I didn't see it. And, you know, in the last 3 to 4 years, the cost of food has gone through the roof. We all see it every time we go to the store. So I was just wondering, is the city going to provide any money to food banks, put the money in the hands, or in case food, to the people who need it the most? I think that's the spirit of ARPA.
Well, it's one of the spirits of ARPA. So we did do a lot of work, if you recall, around food. You may not have been on the council yet at that point. So there was a lot of work by the city around food during COVID. We also house a very large food bank here in City Hall, a major operation out of this building, and it has some impacts here, it's fair to say, but we're happy to host them. And so that is a major contribution, I think. You know, there was a lot of funding sources for food banks during COVID. I don't recall us even getting an application or a request for funding from a food bank. There was a lot of money going into those organizations, which was fantastic. So that's my recollection. I don't know, Maureen, if you have any other recollections. This is now what, 2-3 years ago. So
No, I don't think we had anyone from the food banks specifically asking for money. We ran programs throughout the pandemic, making sure that anyone with food insecurity was able to receive food. What we have done, Councillor Lucas, is really make a concerted effort to make sure, though, that we are impacting the people who need the funds the most. So not only do we have the whole climate resiliency project with the Housing Authority, we also have, and the actual name escapes me, but I'm sure
Newton Thrives.
Newton Thrives.
Newton Thrive.
Thank you. Where we have 50 families that we are really trying to impact their lives by spending 2 years working with, having counselors work with them and really giving them the tools they need so that they can really get on a pathway to success, if you will, financial success in the years to come. So we've really tried to do a lot of different things to absolutely help the people who need help the most.
Okay, well, I hope you continue to do so, because we're not here to discuss what the Newton Thrives program. I was not a fan of that spending at all. I thought there was a lot of waste in there, but I don't want to get into a back and forth right now on it. The last thing it's a question for Miss Lemieux. I remember we had those ARPA listening sessions maybe a couple of years ago. And you went over the federal guidelines. I was just wondering, could you point me in the direction of the federal guidelines? I was trying to find them online, and I couldn't find them. So when you get a chance,
We will be happy to send you a link. We'll send you a link, Counselor.
Yeah, also there's a nice section that Maureen and her team put in the budget. So the budget document, the FY24 document, I just have it open to this page. There's a whole section on mitigation, American Rescue Plan Act. There's a tab in the budget, and it has some really good excerpts of the requirements, which we've been closely following.
Okay. All right. Thanks you. Thank you for moving in the right direction. That's all I have for now. Thank you for your time.
Council Bixby.
Thank you. Just a couple questions. The first one was in one of the documents we received. It said that the Lincoln Elliott Elementary School community auditorium, that it was canceled. Is that mistake or did I miss something?
Not a mistake, but I understand your concern. The project is not canceled. It is happening. We bonded it as part of the larger Lincoln Elliott project. It will be a city-run auditorium that will be shared with the school. The school will use it during the day and whenever they need it. But then it will be programmed by the city. It's an amazing, those of you who have not been into that space, it's a very large auditorium. We are redesigning it to be accessible, to be better for sound and better for better seating, better the stage space as well. So it's a very exciting part of the Lincoln Elliott project. We just decided to not use ARPA funds to do it and to bond it as part of the larger Lincoln Elliott. And I think, you put $10 million as part of free cash towards that project last year.
Got it. Okay, so just funding mechanisms changed.
It's still there.
Thank you. Got it. And a question on the Newton Highlands Village Center project. It looked like 300,000 had been already spent on it. And I was just wondering if you happen to be able to fill us in on sort of the status of that. And
yeah, good question. I think it is on target to spend the $1 million for the design. My understanding is that they're reaching the final design to move forward with. I know there's been a whole series of public meetings and engagements. Let me find out the next steps and get those to you from DPW. They're leading this. I don't want to say the wrong thing here. And then they do plan to move forward with the design, the final design work through the end of this calendar year. And we're hoping then to use that to get state grant funding for construction.
okay, all right, that confirms with my understanding. So this is just for the design, and then we'd be waiting to do the actual project based on other funding.
That's right. Hopefully not too long, but yes.
Okay. All right. I probably have other questions, but that's it for right now. Thank you.
Anytime.
Council Greenberg.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Mr. Yo, you had stated that there's 1.5 million still unobligated. Is that correct?
That's right.
And if we have ideas, should we reach out to you with those ideas?
Absolutely. To the mayor and to the Maureen and I. Yeah.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
I just wanted to jump in for a minute based on the question that Council Greenberg just had. I thought that I saw a chart that actually listed $15 million as being not obligated. It was the last chart that you put up.
Yeah, so that's an accounting term, obligated. So that ARPA, the federal government, is using. So there's certain things that we have like a contract for when we know what the dollar amount is. So Perry and Connor then have put that into the obligated category. The project may have been fully allocated. We may have decided it's a $1 million project, for example. But so far, we've only obligated $500,000 of X months worth of design, for example. We know we're going to spend $1 million in design eventually, but only $500,000 has been obligated. So I don't know, Perry or Maureen, if you want to help me, I'm not an accountant.
So if Mr. Chair, if I can just jump in. So things like the exciting energy projects that we're going to do at Horace Mann, the NHA Horace Mann facility, none of that money is obligated yet. We spent time doing studies. We have gone out to bid. We have the project really all planned. We know what we're going to spend there. We haven't signed the contract yet. And so that's why it's considered unobligated. So really, it's that 1.5 million that we haven't appropriated or assigned to something. It's not all, there's 15 million not spent yet, not actually under contract. The Washington Street pilot program is certainly another example. It's not under contract yet for anything, but we clearly know what we want to do with the money. So it's really the 1.5 that is, that we're still making final decisions on.
All right. Well, obviously, I know I'd feel more comfortable, and I'm sure others, as that figure actually comes down. So what I'm gonna ask for tonight is I don't want to NAN this item, or I actually want to hold it, because I think it would be wise on the committee's part to get an update in 2 or 3 months' time to, again, everybody has the same good intentions here, that we don't really want to leave any money on the table. So I think it's important that we keep a close eye on it. And for that reason, when we do take a vote, I would ask that somebody makes a motion of holding it. And then maybe at some point in June, we can get a quick update.
I would be happy to do that.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. And then the other thing is, it's gonna be a real challenge to not leave money on the table, because some of these projects, we're not gonna know how much they actually cost to very close to the end of the year. But is it, and again, I'm only offering this idea or suggestion since it came up, but if you find yourself with X amount of dollars where you can move quickly because you don't need our approval, is something like some of the very needy food banks that we do have servicing the city. Could you say, we have an extra $100,000 and we're gonna give it to these 4 different food banks, as opposed to letting it not, having it not be spent? Is that something that you've been thinking about? And maybe there's some other ideas where you could move quickly to get some money to some eligible, quite important projects?
Any ideas that you have, we'd be happy to hear. We're certainly also looking at existing projects, road paving, for example, where we could quickly move money into a contract. So be happy to hear any of those ideas.
Okay. And I wanted to address a point that Council Lucas made. I am sensitive to following our rules, which say that items should be sent to us 48 hours in advance. Council Lucas, the 4 items that you mentioned, because they were in less than 48 hours ahead of time, if we actually got into those, I was going to ask for a approval by the committee to take them up. That's according to our rules. I'm told that it's not that we can't take them up. The council just has to vote to take them up. I probably should have done that. Jonathan is a good report, but Council Lucas is right. I don't know why it couldn't have been in the packet on Friday.
I just created it the last couple hours, so I would not have been able to do it last week. So,
well, the point is
Yeah.
that this item has been, on our agenda. I know that there was contact made by the clerk last week, so I think we need to do a better job of it. I'm not looking to be difficult, but I'm
Yeah.
not taking items up in the future, so.
okay, we've never been asked to send presentations a week in advance, so.
Not a week,
yeah.
48 hours, Friday
Okay.
packet, that's all we're asking.
The other option is not to do a presentation, so,
No, that's not an option, Jonathan.
okay,
All right, and the next time, I know this was something that was a request on our part, but the next time that there's a request on your part, then if need be.
we've never been asked to make a presentation to send that the week ahead of time. Never been asked that. So if that's the new rules, then let us know that. I'm just trying to be fair. I get the docket items sending major memos in advance. That all makes complete sense. So
Well,
but presentation.
I would consider a presentation a major,
Okay.
so as far as this chair is
That's news to
concerned,
me.
as far as this chair is concerned, the document that was presented tonight, whether you want to call it a presentation or backup or a document, it's something that I would strongly ask that it be included in the Friday packet so people can review it ahead of time and be prepared, better prepared to respond to when the presentation is made. That's all I'm asking. I would just ask it be sent out in Friday's packet. So we can just leave it at that. Are there any other questions?
Oops.
Council Maliki?
One quick question. The ARPA page on the city website from which I pulled the incentive initiatives and investments information. It says as of May 1, 2023. Is there a reason that has not been updated?
May not have been refreshed. I will check in with the team and we'll make sure it is refreshed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was
There's not been a lot of new projects since then, but it will make sure that all the new projects or anything that's changed is included on the website.
Yeah, and I was curious about one item, if I may have permission to refer to the Mr. Curley's spreadsheet. You have an item for carriageway easements, $230,000, I guess is the budget for it.
Yeah.
Only 74,700 has been spent, and I assume those are for the carriageway project where you needed to take some little bits of people's front yards.
Little slivers of land, yes.
Yeah, so is
Temporarily.
that not entirely spent because you're still you don't need that much? It's less than you thought you needed, or is it because
Not everyone has responded to the letters that went out. So there's a whole process you have to go through to notify the landowners of the easement, and then you have to give them a certain amount of time, and then send them back information. You're almost pleading with them to take the money and be done with it. But so we're going through that process right now. The law department and the engineering department are working on that.
Is that the kind of thing, though, that we know how much we're going to have to pay them, and we're not going to have to
we
come
know
up with
to the
whatever-
penny. Yes, we know that's the 230. We know to the penny how much we have to pay them.
Okay, so it's just, and we know we can spend it by 2 years from the end of the year. So
Yeah.
Okay, just curious about that one.
Yeah, good question.
All right, thank you. I will move to hold if there's. We've got more people. We haven't
You
had.
can still move, you can still make. the
Okay,
motion.
I'll make the motion just to get it done. So.
Okay, Council Mickley?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to build on the points made by Councilor Lucas, sort of the idea to address the areas of greatest need. I mean, looks like we've used our ARPA funds on a lot of great and important issues across the city, but as we think about that last $1.5 million, I think it's a really good opportunity to focus on what the original purpose of ARPA funding was for, and just looking at a website that describes from the U.S. Department of Treasury's perspectives, the goal of ARPA is to promote and streamline the provision of assistance to individuals and communities in greatest need, particularly communities that have been historically disadvantaged and have experienced disproportionate impacts of the COVID-19 crisis, with a focus on equity, workers, community engagement, and evidence-based interventions. So
there's also other purposes for ARPA as well, including helping municipalities deal with lost revenue, and we had extremely substantial lost revenue. And so there were multiple purposes for ARPA. That is what you just described is certainly one of them. And the early phases of ARPA, we did really focus substantially on those kinds of projects during COVID. But if you have further ideas for the 1.5 million, please let us know.
Yeah, I think even just the way the recovery's been, right, with financial assets doing well. So people that can afford to save and invest have actually done pretty well from COVID, but people that haven't been able to do that aren't doing as well. So I just think it's an opportunity looking forward with the last $1.5 million to focus on those areas of greatest need.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, there's been a motion to hold. Any further discussion? All those in favor of hold, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? Any abstention? Okay, the motion passes by a vote of 7-0. Thank you. Next item is 157-24. Councilors Gentile Block, Laredo and Crinchman requesting that the mayor, through the law department, solicit proposals from outside special counsel to assist the city in the analysis of the city's rights and remedies to ensure compliance with and enforcement of applicable permits and approvals at the Turtle Lane site in Auburndale. On behalf of my fellow councilors in Ward 4, and also the president who signed on, I just want to give a very brief introduction on this item. I think most of you are familiar with the Turtle Lane site. Turtle Lane just had its 8th anniversary last Thursday, March the 21st. It was 8 years ago that the project was approved by the city council. If you have not been by the site, I ask you to please do so. The site is in tremendous disrepair, and it has been for quite some time. I think it's safe to say it's very frustrating to all, not just the immediate abutters, but other residents of Auburndale, obviously the councilors, and I know it's been extremely frustrating to the Commissioner of Inspectional Services, Planning Department, Law Department, and it continues to be a very difficult situation as far as getting some progress or getting this project done. Everybody in every ward of the city, I understand, runs into these situations with permits that seem to drag on in unsightly situations, but I don't know of any other project that has gone on for this long and has had it's such a a large site in total disrepair as this project has been. So we docketed this item not with the intention of being critical of any department, especially the law department, but just saying that there may be a strategy out there that we are unaware of, that we should be looking into, and there may be a law firm that has a specific expertise, which is, we use from time to time, and that is the intention of the docket item. I've heard from the law department. They have concerns. They can speak to those if they want tonight, asking that that we meet with them so they can fill us in on certain aspects of what's been going on. We do have a meeting this week with the 3 ward councilors, and maybe the president as a doctor would be there. My colleagues, I haven't even told them this, but I did extend an invitation to the land use chair, just so we're not duplicating efforts, because they are the substantive committee, and I don't want to get ahead of them. I just wanted to start the discussion a little bit tonight and make my fellow finance members aware of what was going on. So we're going to have this meeting. I think it's on Thursday afternoon. We'll hear from the law department, and the next possible step is in consulting with the chair of land use would be to have a joint meeting, because obviously they have an interest in this too. And that's pretty much where things stand right now. I see Councilor Crinchman has joined us, and since he's a colleague from Ward 4, if you want to add something, Josh, please do. Or
thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I appreciate it. I think you said it well. I think it's been sitting there as somewhat of an eyesore for a long time. we hear regularly from neighbors, from other folks who go in and out of Auburndale, who are very disappointed by the state of affairs there and want to regularly see what we can do to get things moving. And I think, as Councilor Gentiles point out, it's been extremely frustrating. I know it's been frustrating for others in the city. And so I was supportive of this because, you know, like him, I've just been wondering, what can we do? What more can we do? Or what other avenues can we take to try and reinvigorate this and get this moving again? So thank you.
Questions from the council, or if Jonah or if the city solicitor, Ms. Giuliani, want to offer anything, you know, that would be fine. Or we can wait, you know, until our meeting on Thursday, but any questions from anybody? Comments? Ms. Giuliani.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I simply just wanted to add and share with you that we have been working with and supporting ISD and working with the mayor's office to continue to enforce all the applicable laws that we have available to us as the municipality, and we've been diligently trying to pursue all effective avenues to effectuate some change for folks here. I appreciate the frustration that residents have. I know the mayor's office appreciates that and echoes that frustration. We've been working very closely with them in ISD to try to stay on top of this project, on top of this developer, so that we can move things along. As you mentioned, we do have an opportunity to meet with you and the ward councilors to speak a little bit more in detail about the legal resources that we have available to us, and to discuss with you strategy. And I welcome that opportunity to talk to you about it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, can I then just get a motion to hold, and we will report back if what the next steps are. As I say, just wanted to introduce the item, and we will certainly keep the committee involved of proposed next steps. So can I get a motion to hold?
I'll move to hold.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor to hold the item, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the motion passes 7-0. Final item is 37-24. Councilors Maliki, Laredo, and Lucas requesting a discussion about change or policy change to include renters and tenants in addition to property owners when notification is required for special permits, traffic council items, and other proposed changes. I see two of the petitioners here. So I guess I'll turn it over to you to present this item. Councilor, as a member of the committee, Councilor Maliki, why don't you go first?
Sure, thank you. This kind of goes back to a massive tree cutting situation in Upper Falls, where a long-term renter abutting the property where the tree cutting happened had no idea it was happening until the saws were going out there, and it was a special permit, and the owner presumably got a notification but had no reason to tell the tenant. And that's one example. We've had situations when, Councilor Wright and I and others have been going door to door in the village centers, passing out information about the rezoning proposals to make sure that business owners who were tenants but not owners of their property, which is the case for probably a whole lot of them, to make sure they knew what was going on. There's traffic council items that recent series on North Street where a lot of apartments on the stretch that the notification applied to, but they weren't going to be notified unless somebody went door to door, which I couldn't get to the doors, but I was doing lobbies of individual buildings. And it just seems that with on the order of it's like 30% of our housing units, I guess, are rentals, and presumably that about that percent of residents. We're leaving out a whole cohort of people who don't get to weigh in on a lot of decisions that will affect them much more than they will affect the owners of their buildings. So I think in the interest of sort of equity and, getting their feedback, which could be useful in situations where we're making, traffic changes or parking changes or, building changes, that I would like to see them included in some formal way. It seems like we have a database of residents and addresses the same way the Postal Service has a list of addresses. So if you direct something to the address itself, you're getting the person who lives there. So that's the motivation from me.
All right, before I ask for other comments, I know that Cassidy has been working on getting us some information about the costs associated with this and anything else that she may have, information she may have received. So Cassidy, do you want to share some of the information that you've been working on to this point?
Yes, so we did look at some numbers just for the land use committee, for special permits. And it did, with the numbers that we had, it did look like for just land use, it would add an additional $4,000 to our postage budget, each year. And again, that's just for land use. If I talk about stuff for ZAP, for traffic council, that would also be an additional cost. Because we averaged that for the past 3 months, it would be an additional $900 from what we have done in land use in the last 3 months, and then obviously times that by 4, and it was about $4,000. That would be an additional budget for this year.
And okay, have you given any thought to like staff time to send everything out, or?
Yeah, so of course it would be additional staff time as well, because it would be double the amount of notices that we're sending out now.
Okay. Councilor Humphrey.
I didn't know if you wanted to call on Councilor Lucas first.
No, you're on the committee. Besides, I've heard
Okay.
I've heard an awful lot from Councilor Lucas tonight. I want to hear from you. You haven't spoken.
Sure, yeah. So
Reed's
I'm
not going anywhere.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm in favor of this, but I wanted to zoom out a little bit on this. My understanding is that in general, the city still does not have a list of who's a tenant in the city. We kind of know sort of general percentages, and the assessors can sometimes guesstimate, based on the type of property this is and that the person lives out of state who owns it, maybe it's a rental, but there's no comprehensive list. And this came up initially for me back when we were working on that emergency rental assistance program at the beginning of the pandemic, and I was trying to go around to notify people, and turned out we didn't have a list. And then subsequently to that, there had been some discussions among some of the counselors about things we could do to help protect tenants from situations where a landlord's not properly maintaining a property and it's becoming unsafe, but they're concerned about reporting it to either ISD or the health department because of fear of retaliation, that kind of thing. And most of the solutions that we were thinking about or looking at in other communities all kind of depended on first having an actual list of who's a renter. Now, I understand the point that Councilor Maliki just made in terms of like, just send the notice to the affected address and whoever's there will get it. But to my mind, especially with, if we have, 30% or whatever the number is now who are renters, plus there's business tenants and, that's a different kind of tenant. But obviously similar issues in a lot of cases. And this number is presumably going to grow, or at least that seems to be the policy objective of all the recent reforms to planning that we've done. We really need to have some sort of list developed to know who is a renter, or at least, at the very least, which properties are not owner occupied at minimum. I'm blurring a little bit here between residential and commercial, but again, I think there's some overlap in terms of the issues and the concerns here. I don't know if this is a matter of, are we able to add something to the city census to ask that, or I don't know what it would be, but this has become a repeated stumbling block on things, and I think it's only going to become more of one. So, to my mind, very narrowly, this is a very obvious proposal to me, that we should be noticing the people who actually live there and so forth. Because in some cases people are long-term tenants for many years at a time, and the landlord maybe never comes around, and why are we sending a notice to the the landlord who might not even be in the community, and what is that really accomplishing? And at that point we're just wasting postage anyway. It's not having the desired effect if we're talking about costs. So to me, this specific thing before us tonight seems really obvious, but big picture, it really seems like we're lacking a much more comprehensive list that we're going to need to address a lot of policy issues, not just this one. I don't know if anybody had any particular observations on that, or if this was things we've been thinking about, but I know I've raised it with, let's see, the assessors and the planning department and the clerk's office and so forth. So, it's because it cuts across a lot of different departments. Thank you.
Cassidy, do you want to respond to that specific point?
Yes, so the list that we used today to look at to compare what the cost would be is a residence at list. So it like Councilor Humphrey said, it won't tell me who the renter is. It's just going to tell me that this is an address that abuts this property. So that's why we would be sending out so many more public hearing notices for that, because it won't tell me if it's a renter. It just says there's a resident at this address.
Okay. Bonnie, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, just real briefly, I think Councilor Humphrey's correct. We ran into this with the Village Center Overlay District, where we sent out some 6,000 postcards. And what we did to capture the renters was just to say for the occupant, which is not perfect, because, how many people look at stuff that says occupant that comes to them. But the other case is there could be multiple people at the same address. That's certainly the case with business addresses. There are multiple tenants. And, part of the issue is that they change so quickly, tenancies, that Councilor Maliki is correct. There's probably a certain percentage of folks that are long-term renters, but it tends to be a transient population. And it's hard. And I can't remember anybody who was a renter that came in on the VCOD stuff. We did have some property owners come in, but nobody identified themselves as a renter.
Okay. Council Lucas.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, I co-docketed this with Councilor Maliki. We had discussed this amongst one another beforehand. And as someone who does rent here in Newton, if I wasn't involved in city government and politics and all that, at least when I first moved here, I would not have known, or if there were any projects that had a public hearing in my particular neighborhood. I'm thinking of just next door to me a couple of years ago I'm in the Newtonville Historic District. My next door neighbor wanted to put on an addition to her house. I knew about it because I was on the commission, but no one in my building knew about it, and this is not a large building. It's only 6 units in here. So that's when it first came to my mind that, oh, maybe we should be alerting renters on certain land use issues, traffic council, trees especially. And then Director Heath, you were talking about the VCOD and the commercial tenants. I think you sent out some notices to them, the ones who don't own the property, and you only got a couple coming back to the public hearings and those community meetings. I was hoping that number would have been higher, but and then I think when we, and Director Heath, you might remember this one, back when I was on the Newtonville Area Council, we did our Envisioning Washington Street survey. I had contacted the clerk's office back in 2018 for not a property owner list, but a residential extract list. And we sent the postcards to, I think it was everyone in wards 1, 2, and 3. And of course, this is 2018. This is before Trio, before Austin Street, before Dunstan-East is getting built now, but it was before, some of these larger projects would have been constructed. And, I certainly respect the work that city staff does when it comes to noticing residents through the legal notices. But I don't want to overburden them, but I still do believe that we have an obligation to let them know what's going on in Newton. It's just a simple letter in the mail. And, I don't know how we could craft an ordinance that alerts residents, but I would start first with commercial tenants. I mean, there's fewer commercial tenants than there probably are residential tenants. So I would hope we could at least start with commercial tenants, one. And then if we do residential tenants, I mean, I think Northland was 800 units, and then Riverside, whatever that's going to be, 500 or 600. Dunstan-East is 300. You have that 40B over here on Craft Street. That's another 300 or so. That's still being, debated by the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I could just go down the list of, relatively medium-sized to large-size apartment buildings that are going to be built in the coming years, especially now that we have the VCOD, and some projects will be coming online for that, hopefully within the next decade. So I think it's time that we get out ahead of this. And, I would like to work with the clerk's office, the law department, planning staff on this to make sure we alert everyone in the city about public hearings. So I'll leave it at that for now, but I do want to work with staff on this.
Okay, just one issue that I wanted to point out, regardless of, where this is headed. The docket item specifically talks about when notification is required for special permits, traffic council items, and other proposed changes. I'm not sure what other proposed changes means, and I think it needs to be obviously a little more specific. So Council Maliki.
Thank you. I guess I didn't think I could come up with an exhaustive list, but I was thinking of things like the historical commission's notices that go out for demolition review would be one example. I think Conservation Commission probably sends out notices to abutters for their items. The notification on tree permit applications, we've sort of farmed that out to the applicants as part of the tree preservation ordinance strengthening. So that would not be a city obligation. I had a question for Ms. Flynn. I believe, I think we are legally obligated under state law, I guess, to notify owners of properties. So we obviously want to continue doing that. But I think Councilor Humphrey made a good point that it would be good to have like a kind of some kind of master list, and is there a way to do some kind of merge where we include both something like the resident extract that covers, or I don't even know if you need to notify every person at a particular apartment unit, say if there's 2 residents, it seems like 1 notice is enough for the address. But a way to sort of merge addresses and with the owners of the addresses where there are out of, non-resident owners, and eliminate the duplications. Is that something that, IT or somebody could figure out?
So I don't currently have a solution for that. I could work with our IT department. It's just, we just take it from our butters database currently, and it gives us 2 lists. We get 1 list that says owners or property owners, and then 1 list that says residents at, which is what Director Heath was talking about, where it's not even saying a person's name. It just says resident at this address. So there's no way for me to merge those 2 lists currently.
But it sounds like you're getting both owners and residents effectively.
But I can't confirm that on the residents at list, and I'm because I'm legally obligated through Mass General Law to send this to the property owners. I can't just use 1 list. I have to make sure that I'm sending it to property owners.
Right, but if you sort of combine the residents at list with the owners list. Okay, so I guess if you added those 2 lists together, you'd be sending duplicate notices to somebody who lived in their house.
Yes.
I guess that's what I'm saying. Is there a way to avoid that?
Not at this moment. I don't have a solution for that to avoid that, because these just print out in labels for us, honestly, and then that's how we get them printed, and we use staff to do that. And as you know, with some of these land use problems, and honestly, especially with traffic council, they probably send out more notices, and they already send out at the largest 400 public hearing notices for 1 meeting. So that could effectively double the amount that we're sending out right now, and there could be duplicates in that list.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So, what would the petitioners suggest or care to do at this point? Do you want time to work on this additionally to identify, specifically when these notices would go out, whether it's, includes historic conservation and a few other times when we notice owners, or what do you suggest?
Can I answer that?
Sure.
Yeah, so I would like to work with Councilor Malachy, President Laredo, and Ms. Flynn on, I would like, for starters, I want the committee to hold this, please. And I would like to work with Councilor Malachy, President Laredo, and Ms. Flynn, and anyone else in the clerk's office on coming up with an idea on how we can alert renters. And I can work offline with her and them.
Okay, and so, Councilor Malachy.
That sounds good to me.
Do you want to make a motion to hold?
I'll move to hold.
Okay, motion to hold. All those in favor, any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, so the motion passes. The item is held. Before we adjourn, I just wanted to bring 1 item to your attention. This was not a docket item, which is why I sent it out as late as today. But I thought it was important that my colleagues on the committee were aware of an email that we received from the treasurer at the end of the day on Friday. Did everybody get that today?
Yep.
Lots of head. Good. So the email speaks for itself. the treasurer pointed out that there were a couple of banks who this quarter went from the Veribank rating green status to a yellow status. The treasurer made a gave us very clear information on why that happened, and also a recommendation that we don't take any further action right now other than to continue to monitor the situation. I think that he expects that because these were kind of one-time occurrences, that these banks will be back to green the next quarter. I personally agree with what he said and what he's planning to do. I just want you to know that we received that information. The good news is that it's an indication that our financial guidelines policies are working, because the treasurer did exactly what he was supposed to do by notifying us. And, you know, we'll continue, you know, and to keep an eye on it. I'll continue to share information like that. In addition, I've asked Cassidy to send to everyone on the committee a copy of the financial guidelines so that you can see for yourself, you know, how these situations are supposed to be addressed and the notifications are given. We actually have kind of two sets of financial guidelines. One is strictly for our rainy day stabilization fund, and the other is just our general financial guidelines. But again, the treasurer obviously is keeping an eye on things for us. You should have gotten a list of where our money is currently in the different banks. It's a report that is supposed to be generated quarterly. And the treasurer obviously did it for this quarter, so you have that information. So again, just wanted to make sure that you knew what was going on. If you have any quick questions, myself or Maureen could try and answer them for you. Otherwise, again, it was just provided for information. Okay, anything? Okay, time to get, seems like it's time to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor of adjournment? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, have a good rest of the night. Thank you.
Thank you.